This episode of Success Through Connections is brought to you by Legacy Realty Group, North Florida. The team that treats your home, your time, and your goals as top priority. Real people, real results, real care.
Well, welcome to Success Through Connections. Today, I have a really innovative speaker for us. I have Jan Spence, and she and her family introduced peach jello to the world in a national commercial in the 1970s. So I'm going to be asking her about that. Now, she began her career selling at the age of 10, and it wasn't lemonade. She was selling donuts in her summer camp. I love that. And then as she got older, I don't know, well, she did that at 10, but when she was 18, she started selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Oh man, that had to be hard. And then as she became an adult, she got into sales and consulting with national accounts like Walmart, Pillsbury, and a lot of other ones that were just incredible. So she's had a great, well-rounded career. This is how I came to know Jen. She fulfilled a lifelong dream, and that was to play professional women's full tackle football. Oh my gosh. So I'm sure we're going to share a little bit about that. I'm so excited. I love that story. And she's a TEDx speaker. She consults, she speaks across the entire world. She's been traveling all over. So I was so happy that we were able to connect to get her on the show today. So she talks to different companies about how to reel in your core values and how to dare to be different. So welcome, Jan. I'm so glad you're here today on Success Through Connections.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. You've already teased out a lot of curious things to your audience, so I'm sure we'll weave those in as they apply, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, I want to start with your peach jello. I want to know how that happened. What is that all about? Because I haven't heard that story.
So my mom was always a little bit starstruck. We lived in Savannah, Georgia, and they filmed a lot of commercials, a lot of movies. So to go old school, Cannonball Run, Gator, I think, oh, now I can't remember the famous star that was in all those, but Burt Reynolds. He used to really come to Savannah a lot to film. And so my mom always wanted to be in the movies and the shows. And so we got to be some extras in movies, but she saw that they were doing some tryouts for General Mills to introduce the new flavor of peach jello. And what better place to do that than in the peach state in Georgia? So she went to the call for auditions. You were supposed to bring a picture of your family that you were, proposing to the group. Well, my mother was the very last one to go that day. I guess she just didn't know the routine, but she was the very last person to be called. So she walks into this room with these tired Hollywood producers, big shots from New York and LA, and they're kind of gruff and rough and very direct. And so my mom sits down in front of them. They look at the pictures and they look at her and they're like, okay, you're our last one for the day. Do you have any acting experience? And she looks at him and she says, honey, I'm a preacher's wife. I have to act every day. And it broke them up. They started laughing. They're like, that's the Southern sass we want. That's the grit. That's the charm. And she got the deal. So our family got to work with these Hollywood team and create the commercial to introduce peach jello brand gelatin to the world.
Oh,
now you know the rest of the story.
That is a great story. And that's one I hadn't heard. That's one for the books. So moving on from jello and commercials, I know that you had a lifelong dream to be a professional women's football player. What was it in the beginning that even motivated you to want such a career?
I have to go. My mom's the hero in a lot of these stories.
A lot of our moms are.
Yes, the influence that they have over us, especially as young girls. So my mom always wanted to play. So I won't give the full story. They can go to TEDx.
That's right. And got to leave something for them.
Yes, exactly.
But you were motivated by your mother. What was it exactly?
So she would watch college football. She was a huge football fan. Our family was sports fans, and we live in the South, so we watch SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs and Georgia Tech, and she just would watch the screen and she would say, "That looks like so much fun. I want to be on the field. I want to put on the shoulder pads and the helmet and tackle people." And so I thought, yeah, that does look fun. I want to do that. Well, I was a little girl. Of course, there weren't any football teams for little girls. So she instilled that dream in me. And again, to leave the cliffhanger, I kept it alive. My husband knew passionate about it. And then one day they were expanding into the Jacksonville area, and we found out about the tryouts, and they'll have to watch the rest of the story to see what happens. So
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal story. I love your story about playing in the women's professional football league. That was a great story. So, can you explain a little bit? Now, I know your story, but you talk about cheerleaders, which to
mhm.
me, that concept is so incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about this concept? Explain what the concept is and how you can use that concept in the workplace.
I would love to. And I think this really, for your listeners, Zelda, is just reinforces what you talk about, success through connections. So the concept of cheerleadership came out of my experience wanting to play and going to the tryouts. And really, I used what I had, which was an igloo cooler full of water and Gatorade and some encouraging words. So it was a very competitive environment. The women weren't being nice to each other. I was failing miserably at all the drills and exercises. And I thought, what do I have? How would I approach these tryouts like Mama would? And I thought, I'll get to know the people. So I started handing out bottles of water and Gatorade, learning the women's names. I started
This
cheering
was
for
during the
them.
tryouts.
This was during the tryouts. Yep. About an hour into the tryouts.
Okay.
And so I started encouraging them, yelling for them, both people that were doing well, but also those that were struggling. And what I realized, and I think that is so important for your listeners too, is that behavior is contagious. Behavior is contagious. And so all of a sudden, as I am applauding them, it seemed a little awkward for other people not to applaud. So they started cheering each other on, and we noticed that our level of play, the community, the connection started happening to where we were working together rather than working against each other. So without realizing it that day, I really created cheer leadership. And so the way that applies in the workplace today is that people are looking for that personal communication connection now more than ever. Yes, you might be linked in, connected with, 5,000 followers and have so many friends on Facebook, but really those deeper connections. One thing I love about you, Zelda, is when we have a visit or an event, I get some sort of note card from you that is just, it was great to see you, or I loved talking about this. And you take that extra time to write that note card, put the stamp on it, find the address. That's not an easy thing these days, but find the address and put it in the mail. And so it's those little touches that say, wow, Zelda really valued that time together. And I think when people know that they're valued and seen and heard, that's when we start making those connections. And now you become front of mind to where I go, well, what can I do to help Zelda out? How can I be more supportive of her? So I'll give you in a nutshell what the definition of cheerleadership is, and then you tell me how you want to dive into it, if so. But I really define cheerleadership as the intentional lifting up and encouraging of other people, both when they're doing well, but also when they're struggling. And that increases morale, productivity, and ultimately profitability. And sometimes profitability looks different in different realms, but that's how I define it.
I had a conversation with a close friend the other day. I was not in a great mood. I was like, things weren't going well. I was struggling. And I said, one of the things that brings me down is when I'm going through social media and I see all these successful posts of people I know or kind of know. And it's like, it just irks me sometimes. And she said, well, I said, so here's what I started doing. I started not following them, but stop watching, stop comparing. But yet I still cheer them on. I still want them to be successful, but I just don't want it to rent space in my head to say, Zelda, you need to compare yourself with them, because you can't compare, but you still can cheer on your friends and other people to be successful and to be the best they can. So that's cheerleadership, in my opinion. It's like, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's healthier for us.
Yeah.
To encourage it. It shows character. And sometimes we have to humble ourselves to go, I really don't want to congratulate her on her 57th keynote this month.
But
good for her.
kudos to
Let me cheer
her.
on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that during the football tryouts that you had some struggles, you faced some challenges. So how did you maintain the confidence and encourage others when you were struggling?
So great question. I have to go back to my mom. I told you she's the hero here. But I recall some gals said some pretty nasty things to me from the sidelines because I was doing so poorly. And very hurtful. And I really had a choice at that point. And that's something, Zelda, that I think if your listeners reflect on their own personal and professional careers, they can think of that time that it was for them. But it was that time where I was at a crossroads and I thought, okay, I could just leave. This is obviously not going well. I can just quit, give up on my dream. I showed up, take it for what it is and leave. Or I can stay and figure out how I'm going to make this work. And so I think we've all had those crossroads where it's like, I can give up on my dream or on my focus or on my desire to get this client, or I can figure out how to make this happen. And I recall a time that my mother she was the preacher's wife. And so she was leading a little youth group of people. She had all the kids in a circle. They were playing hot potato or something. She explained the rules. They start to play, but then she notices a gal that's over in the corner. And that particular gal she was that one that we all kind of know that just didn't quite fit in socially. She was just a little bit awkward.
Right.
So she wasn't playing. And my mom actually stopped the game and she went over to her. She put her arms around her and she led her back to the circle. And she said, Cindy's here. Now we can all play. So really that sense of being inclusive when that's not happening. And so that's what I started to do. I'm like, I'm going to approach these tryouts like Mama would, and she would know everybody's name and she'd be cheering for them. So I grabbed water and I took it to the first woman, introduced myself, learned her name, and so on till I'd given out all the water and Gatorade. And now I could call their names and encourage them. And it just completely changed the environment. And the coach noticed. He noticed that we were playing better. We started to formulate as a team rather than 80 individuals. So that was power.
So awesome. I know when I gave a speech recently, obviously you get there early and you meet a few of the people who are there early. And later during the speech, I actually called her name out. And afterwards she was like, I can't believe you remembered my name. I'm like, it's just so empowering and it's a good feeling. It's like, yeah. And when you're in a meeting, I tell people when I talk about making authentic connections. I mean, I'm not sending you a note just to be sending you a note. I make a real connection. It's like find that person in the corner who is standing by themselves. They're shy. They're an introvert. They want to be included. They just don't know how. So you go over there and introduce yourself to them. It's like, yeah, go over there and include them. People want to be included. So, yeah.
I agree. And Zelda, you talk a lot about networking. And I think what you just said there are nuggets of gold there. Most people, when they network, we know in general, don't maybe quote my sources here, please, but at conferences and events, about 70% of the room are introverts. So the last thing they want to do is, hi, boss says, go to this conference, go to this meeting, and walk into a room full of strangers and introduce yourself, get to know people and sell them something.
Awful.
It's a nightmare. So most people tend to gravitate, I know that person, and they latch on to the people that they know. But I'll go in, and I bet you do this too. I'm looking for that one person that's scrolling on their phone, sitting by themselves. And I was like, they've never been here. They're not having a bad day, or they don't know anyone. And that's the person to go sit down next to.
The one who's scrolling on their phone, they're the ones to go to because they're bored or they don't know. It's not that they're bored. They don't know anybody and they're uncomfortable. So,
When it comes to buying, selling, or managing rental property, don't settle. Choose the professional team that's experienced, knowledgeable, and yes, they actually answer the phone. Legacy Realty Group North Florida is the full-service real estate firm that delivers peace of mind. With over 16 years of local expertise, their responsive and dedicated team makes the process smooth, personal, and stress-free. Whether you're selling your home or looking for a reliable property manager, Legacy Realty Group North Florida has you covered. You'll find their info right in the show notes.
So one of the things that I always do for my own self is when I go to a networking event, I tell myself before I go, I'm going to make one new friend or acquaintance. And I force myself, I go, after you've met one new person, I give myself permission to leave.
Oh, wow.
I don't leave. I never do. But at least I've given myself permission. I make a goal to make one new person's acquaintance, and then I have given myself permission to leave if I want to leave, but I usually don't.
I love that. And I'm a huge believer in setting goals at networking. Most people just show up, eat the dry broccoli with ranch dip, and maybe you utilize their 2 free drink tickets and sit with their friends, listen to maybe a speaker, and then they're out of there without really having a goal and an intention
Yes.
when they go. I love that you're
I
communicating.
actually have a course called the Ultimate Networking Playbook, and I don't mean this as a plug, but I actually talk about how when you go to a meeting or an event when there's a speaker, go there with intention and what to do to stand out and not look weird or anything like that. And to, if you're the introvert, how to get people to come to you rather than you coming to them. So there you go, everybody. My playbook.
Nice,
So
nice.
let me go back a little bit to your journey. You went from professional football and you became an international speaker and consultant. How was that journey? How did that transition?
Oh, it just happened overnight. My phone rang, Zelda, and just
Don't we
started
wish?
throwing money at me. It was the easiest thing I've ever done. Um, that was a lie. That was sarcasm for those of you who might not have caught that. But um, so at the time that I was playing football, I was doing training for another company, doing sales training, and absolutely loved it. Wanted more of it. I wanted more stage time, if you will, and to really connect. So I was only training groups for about 90 minutes a couple of times a week, and I really wanted to go deeper. So my husband and I actually bought and sold a small business. So we had that experience. And then after that's pretty much after doing some consulting with other people who had a similar franchise, I hung my shingle. And it really, to become an international speaker, Zelda, it's working hard. It's nose to the grindstone. It's not being afraid to ask for help. It's being transparent and saying, I don't know what I don't know. Trusting your gut when you listen to what people say and just deciding what path is right for me, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed as a business owner or a salesperson. So just having that dedication to say one foot in front of the other, I'm going to put the building blocks, the foundation in place, and just work the system. So I had someone message me this morning and just said, did you just get extremely busy or are my LinkedIn algorithms off? And I'm like, I don't know what your LinkedIn algorithm sounds like. You need to see a doctor about that. But I said, no, I said, things have picked up. And they said, what do you attribute it to? And I said, really? I said, it's just working the system. It's some referrals that are coming back to me for people that saw me speak several years ago. It is connecting through LinkedIn with the right groups. And so it's just consistently doing the
It's
little things
being
along the way.
consistent, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's like I hear people, I'm a realtor and I heard from somebody who I've just been in touch with for the past 2 years, and out of the blue, she goes, you're so consistent. You're always staying in touch with me. And now I'm ready. I'm like, yeah.
Great.
So it takes time. Now I know you have a talk that's Dare to be Different.
Yes,
Okay. And it's keys for goal setting
correct.
for
Yep.
success. So can you discuss with us some of your innovative approaches to goal setting? Could you share some of those strategies with our listeners?
I'd love to. So the one that pops into my mind that I think is a bit of a different tack than a lot of people talk about goal setting. So you've heard BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, and I have no problem with those types of goals. But what I think we do, similar to my own situation as I started out growing my speaking business, that and no elephants were harmed in the mentioning of this comment, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Please don't eat elephants. I love elephants. But it would be overwhelming. We need to write a book. You need to have a podcast. You need to have a following. You need to be posting on social media 800 hours a day. You need a demo reel. It was all of these things, and I got very overwhelmed. So what I did to reach my own goals is I learned through some neuroscience that, and I call them A or B or C goals. And if you can imagine a little target, and in the center might be that the total picture, the big, hairy, audacious goal. On the next outer circle would be a lighter goal, would just be a step toward that. And then on the very outer circle is just one baby step in that direction. What we know is that our brain cannot distinguish the word or. So if we have an A or B or C goal, if we hit any of those, our brain can flood us with endorphins if we allow it and if we're intentional. The same on just that baby step. So let's just use one of the most famous goals that people set, just being healthier. So maybe we park the car further from the grocery store and we walk a little further in. If we celebrate that and we're intentional about that, if we're cognizant of that's one baby step that can tell our brain that we're successful at reaching goals, just as powerful as we lost the 40 pounds and by going to the gym every day. So looking at that small step, maybe you're fearful of making cold calls, but you make just one. Or in your case, I'm going to this networking event and I'm just going to make one new acquaintance and then I can let off the gas pedal. And what we often find is, I think you intuited earlier, once you hit that one goal, you're like, well, I'm going to park farther from work now. Or I made one acquaintance. What if I make two or three or four? And we use that energy and we keep going further. So
Yeah.
just really knowing that accomplishing that baby step and celebrating that is just as, it tells our brain that we're just as successful as being able to reach that bigger goal.
Yeah. I love meeting the new people. You never know what their story is. And we all have one. I was able to, at one networking event where I met this woman and she was telling me what her career was, and it was a very unusual career. I was actually able to put it into a speech that I gave. It was like, it was such a great story. I loved it. So, I know that throughout your career, throughout everyone's career, really, you have to handle the naysayers, those who doubt your abilities. They have all kinds of advice for you. But so how do you handle the advice when you're facing similar, let me word it this way. Throughout your career, you've handled naysayers who doubted your abilities, probably. And what advice do you have for others who are facing that kind of surroundings where people are saying, no, you can't do that, or that's a dumb idea, or whatever? What advice would you have for people like that?
That is a great question because the biggest naysayer is still following me around because it's me.
Yeah.
So the one,
Is that the imposter syndrome kind of thing?
it is, it's a little bit of that. And it's truly, we are, and I believe, just speaking to the women in the audience, we tend to be our own best critics, our own worst critics. I mean, we're experts at that. I will often tell people, maybe I'm talking about goal setting and how to achieve your goals and be successful. And often, as we're talking through that, I'll say there is not one seminar across the country right now on how to be more critical of yourself because we already do that so well. We don't have to be taught that. We learn that at a very
You
young
don't
age.
have to beat me up. I do a good job on my own.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that's something we have to protect our heads. And I would say, Zelda, I think it's different. It's been different people in the profession that have said, oh, in order to do this, you've got to be on social media 3 hours a day and post at least twice a day. So people who share their formula as the gospel, as opposed to letting you find your own way. So learning that I could say, trust my gut a little bit more and just go, you know what? I'm not going to do social media for 3 hours a day. I'm not going to come up with crappy content to post
And
twice a day.
anybody can post anything they want.
Right. Yeah.
So, they may look like the most successful person in the world, and maybe they're just really good at social media posts.
And I have known those too. So I have they've got great positioning and great marketing, but I'm not out there as much. But I know that I'm busier. I know that I'm taking care of clients and doing what I love, which is being on the stage, working with small groups and teams, help them communicate better and help them just elevate business growth in general.
Got
So
to work your plan. Got to go down your
exactly,
route. Yes. So
exactly.
you are influential. You're around influential people and speakers in your life, and just influential people. Who are some of the most influential ones for you, and what lessons have you learned from them?
Most influential people and what lessons have I learned? It's interesting. It's been different people along the way
Mhm.
that really have just made one comment or one suggestion that have just been that small little tweak that has enabled me to move forward. I remember my first National Speakers Association Central Florida chapter meeting, and I listened to she is a coach to speakers and very well known and very well established in that area. And she was sharing with some of the newer aspiring speakers. And I was there. It was my first time. So I got to attend at no charge just to kind of sit in and listen and look. And she said, you know what? Everyone's message, she asked, what do you want to talk about? And it was about follow your passion, follow your dreams, don't give up on your heart's desires. And she was loving, but very blunt. And she said, you know what? No CEO is going to pay you to come in and talk to their employees to encourage them to leave and go sell puka shells on the beach, in Florida, of course. And so I thought, oh, I was going to have that be all you can be speech. And it doesn't mean that there's not a place for that. There are many people that are very successfully in that lane of follow your dreams, don't give up, and in that real motivational space. But for me, that was just a shift that I had to learn how to position myself for what's the return on the investment to bring me in to talk to a group that a CEO is willing to write me a nice check for.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
So just little comments along the way that just shifted my thinking, that made me think, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. And someone more experienced could help me see that light.
those golden nuggets are so awesome. Yeah. So I have a signature question that I like to ask my guests because we're called Success Through Connections. Can you share a story or an incident where a meaningful connection significantly contributed to your success or opened up a new opportunity for you, something along those lines?
The first one that comes to mind is it was through an organization that I'm a part of, and they almost have their own LinkedIn style of newsletter where people can post a job opening or a need for a photographer in a certain location. They're all in the event planning space. And there was this one post that just said, we need a sales trainer for a day at this rate in the fall. And it had the date. I had the date open. I'm a sales expert. About 50% of my business is sales and business growth training. So I responded to the post appropriately, but I also found the phone number and actually gave her a phone call. So I went above the keyboard and went to the old telephone, because a lot of people forget that we call it a phone, but rarely is it used for one. And so I reached out to her and made that personal connection. Just got to know a little bit about her, how long she'd been there. I was very direct, very respectful. But I said, when do you think they're going to start looking at this? What do you need from me? How can I make your life easier? Because she was on the front end just doing some research and collecting data for the decision makers to be able to review the sales company, training companies. And I just continued to give her that call every couple of weeks. Hey, is it time yet? Do they want to have a call with me? How can I help? And so, believe it or not, just those few touches, Zelda, I got a call from her one day and she's like, all right, they're in the room. They're getting ready to discuss. It's down between you and two other companies. Let me tell you what I know about the other companies, what they like and what they don't like. That intel was golden nugget. I mean, that is what I needed.
Valuable. Yeah.
So I was able to jump on that call, and it turned into probably 7 figures of business over several years, and opened up many more.
Follow up.
And the personal connection, not just another email.
It was an authentic connection. You connected with this woman who could give you the insight that you needed to turn it around. That is such a great story, Jan. I love that. I love that. So how can our audience connect with you?
Super easy, janspence.com, and it's JANSPENCE.com. My social channels are there, most active on YouTube, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And they can watch my TEDx there, or they can just search YouTube for Jan Spence and Associates. So the ampersand and then Associates, and they'll find demo reels and my TEDx talk there. And I've got a book that I wrote about the TEDx talk on employee encouragement called Cheer on Your Team. They can find that on my website or Amazon as well. So, and they can connect if they wanted to connect and have more questions with me and make an authentic, meaningful connection. They can also reach me through the website by phone or by email. So either way.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're in between speaking gigs right now. So I thank you so much for making time for Success Through Connections. And until next time, thank you again, Jan. I look forward to it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for being a great example of being a cheerleader and a great connector. So appreciate you, Zelda.
Thanks, Jan. Bye. Hey, I just wanted to let y'all know that I'm so excited because our podcast has now reached 5,000 plus viewers on the YouTube channel. That's so awesome. And we have a reach of over 4,500 on all the different social media platforms. So we are growing. Success Through Connections. So what I'm doing now is I'm offering a limited number of sponsorship opportunities, and they're quite affordable for the small to mid-sized businesses. So if you would like to gain some additional exposure, we are all over the globe, from Africa to Europe, all over the United States, Canada. Our listeners are everywhere. So if you would like to have some additional exposure, hey, give me a call and let's see about having a sponsorship opportunity for you and your business.
When it comes to buying, selling, or managing your rental property, don't settle. Choose the professionals at Legacy Realty Group North Florida, the real estate company that gives you peace of mind.